Welcome back to One Winning Pod, and 2024 league year is upon us. It's been a month since we last recorded, but a lot has happened. A lot of stuff has happened. And to start off, we'll talk about the biggest signing so far this free agency period. Technically, it was right before free agency, but Madubuike came to terms with the team, 4 years, $98 million, with $75 guaranteed, $53 at signing. And they got out of that tax situation just in time for the new league year, and made life a little bit easier for EDC.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say my part first because I know that you guys had slightly different reactions to the signing, but I was ecstatic because I thought he was gone. I thought that this was going to be another case of a guy coming off a monster year, pricing himself out of Baltimore, getting that big free agent payday. We've seen that happen before with so many guys with the Ravens in past year, whether it be Ryan Jensen or Torrey Smith or I guess Judon we did tag and then failed to bring to a deal after he had played one season on the tag. But yeah, it seemed to me like he could go out there and get even more money than what he got. And he certainly, didn't get a small amount with what the Ravens gave him. But I'm ecstatic to have him back. I think you look at this, what I imagine the Ravens are doing is they're looking at building the defense around three players at each level, Roquan Smith in the middle, Kyle Hamilton on the back end, and Justin Madubuike up front. That's what the message seems to be to me with this signing. And I think it's brilliant. Is Justin Madubuike going to come back and have that huge season that he did? I mean, there's probably going to be some regression, but still, even if he regresses from an absolute monster season, you're still getting a very good player. So great move. I think the money is what you got to spend at that position. And heck, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think my initial reaction was just definitely surprised at how soon he signed. I mean, looking back, and the Ravens had a long period with Nada trying to get him under contract. I think that went back into training camp, and you look at some other ones in the past, like Suggs as well. It took a really long time to kind of get to his deal. So, from if I was Madubuike kind of going into it, I would have kind of expected it to go deep into training camp and sort of, eventually, they would have had the signing. But I think it paid off really well for him and for the Ravens to be able to sign him because, a day after, Chris Jones also got re-signed by the Chiefs, and that deal looked pretty crazy. So, I feel like, it wasn't too early, but it was early enough, I think, to be beneficial for both sides. And I am definitely excited. It's funny. I feel like between this guy and the next guy we're going to talk about, my other reaction is just that I feel like there was a lot of smoke during the season, like probably at the tail end when they were really talking about Madubuike, wanting to re-sign him. And it felt like once we saw a couple of those reports, I felt more confident that it was probably going to happen. And like I said, between this guy and the next guy, I feel like whoever's putting out those reports, I don't know if it's the Ravens, EDC, or what, but like it seems to be working out in these two cases. So
for sure, I thought the cool thing about Madubuike is the deal immediately aged well, like you mentioned with the Chris Jones deal. And also, it was important for both sides, I think, to get it done. It seemed pretty clear to me that Madubuike likes being in this defense. He thinks it's a good fit for him, and he also is used to winning, so he wants to keep doing that. And obviously, EDC thought that this guy is a cornerstone player, so they get the deal done, and it makes them cap compliant, so they don't have to worry about pulling any other levers, like converting the signing bonus for. Or converting the salary, I guess, of Lamar into like a bonus to, fix his contract. And I thought it was really cool is like as the contract details came out for Madubuike, there's some void years, and I love me some void years because I really do feel like it's a way to stay with the NFL. I truly do think at this point, with most teams using void years, to not use them, you're kind of behind. And I think it's kind of cool. So I'll break it down for you real quick. Basically, the Ravens could get out of this contract after year 3, and there would be a $19 million dead cap hit. But the reason it would be $19 million is because after that last year, unless they extend him, which I think they would be advantageous to do. They'll be at $8 million and a $3 million cap hit on the previous next 2 years. So there's $11 million in void years. And I think it's actually maybe a good way to structure a contract as well for the player. Gives them a little bit more leverage to get a re-signing, or at least to have a lot of, extra payday that next year, and then they get signed somewhere else. So they get double paid, right? So I think overall, I'm like pretty excited about the format of this contract. And I'm actually kind of pretty excited about the format of the next contract too. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on the format of the contract, but I know I'm like getting like really into leveraging debt. It's like my new favorite thing.
The only thing I was going to say is like, two void years, not so bad. But if it's a Chris Davis contract, then, void years for 10, 15 or whatever, like, let's not have that. But otherwise, I think it could be advantageous for both sides.
Yeah, the Ravens aren't going to let any player sign that type of deal. The only deal you could maybe argue was that bad, and even then, I think there's a lot of argument against it being anywhere close to that deal, was Flacco's deal. But you were paying a guy who just came off a Super Bowl MVP. Quarterback, you got to pay quarterback a premium. So I think we could get into a really nuanced conversation on that one, because I'm sure I know for a fact lots of people have lots of opinions on that. The last thing I want to say with Madubuike, though, man, is it's going to be so exciting. Maybe it's this season or maybe 2 seasons from now. Madubuike, he's still got a few more years left of his prime. Whatever that year is going to overlap with Madubuike still in his prime and Travis Jones coming into his prime, that's going to be a monster for opposing offensive linemen to have to deal with there. With Travis Jones comes into his own and starts being able to game wreck like we've seen him be able to do in the preseason alongside Madubuike. That is going to be one scary defensive line.
So, Chris, why don't you lead us into the next segment? You already alluded to all the smoke, and it could be good.
Yeah. Well, the Ravens, we're not quiet about wanting a running back. I think, especially in this free agency period too, teams were signing running backs left and right. Tons of starters going to other teams, swapping teams, trades and stuff like that. But the Ravens got who they wanted all along, Derrick Henry. And for a 2-year, $60 million contract, couple incentives each year, $9 million guaranteed as well. And it's funny. I told this in the group chat. I think we were all kind of like a little worried, I think, at all of the running backs being signed and some of our guys, quote unquote, being picked. And eventually at some point I was just like, guys, like, it's Henry's the guy. Like, it's just a matter of time. It's going to happen. And it's, I feel like before, I think I don't want to speak for everybody here, but I think a good bit of people are probably on the fence, maybe schematically, of how he might fit in this offense. But now that he is here and, we've had a chance to, have the presser and, on the lounge and all that stuff, I think a lot of people are going to really, really like this guy, myself included.
I think it's a great move given what all the options were. In a perfect world, I would have loved to have had Saquon Barkley here. I think he's got plenty more in the tank. I think he can still be a huge playmaker if he can stay healthy. But for a variety of reasons, that was never going to happen. You look at the contract that the Eagles gave him, and you look at the fact that I believe word has come out that he grew up an Eagles fan. He gets to go stay in the NFC East and beat back up on the Giants, who I'm sure he's upset about, for giving Danny Dimes all that money and not giving him the big contract, even though, again, that's today's NFL. But I'm sure he's still like, come on, man, I don't care that he's a quarterback. You giving him the money, man, come on. But anyways, and then I think second to that, again, going into free agency, I would have loved for Gus Edwards to come back. I've been outspoken with Gus about Gus Edwards being one of my all-time favorite Ravens. I just think that even though, he's gone in Baltimore, I think he's still got a great chance to do some more stuff with the Chargers. Every time the Gus looks like his career's done, he comes up and shows that he's still got more left in the tank. So, what does give me a lot of intrigue about this signing, though, is like you were talking about, Chris, the smoke screens that turned out to be true, that the Ravens really did want this guy at the trade deadline and still pursued him into free agency. that does scream to me. I mean, Eric DaCosta, we know he's an incredible football mind. There's something there in Derrick Henry's skill set at age 30 that he sees and says, that's going to fit really well with Lamar Jackson. That's going to fit really well with what we're doing on offense. Do I exactly see it right now beyond just, replacement guy for Gus's role in the offense last year? I'll admit it. No, but I'm very open-minded about this. I talked about it in the chat when he was signed. There is not a great history for running backs over the age of 30. There are a couple who have had some pretty incredible seasons. Tiki Barber's last season in the NFL. Curtis Martin, I think, has the record for the most amount of yards in a season after turning 30 years old. He was 31 that year. That was 2004. And of course, Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram came here. His Pro Bowl season in 2019, where he just barely cleared the 1,000-yard mark, he was 30 years old. So, I think that as long as his fans come into it with the expectation that, okay, he's not going to be the 2K yard Henry, and we probably don't need him to be with what Lamar can do, and just be open-minded to the staff, the coaching staff has to know what they're getting into, that he's, older in his career, and there seems to be a plan. So, I'm not sure yet what it's going to be, how much he's going to be part of the offense. But I'm open-minded to it. And I think that a lot of us who are more skeptical are going to be surprised, like you're saying, Chris. So, look, and even if it doesn't work out, that's a really good contract too. So it's not really hurting the Ravens terribly much in cap space either. So it's really a win-win.
Agreed. It was a very favorable contract for the Ravens and their cap situation. I do find it interesting. Like, he'd have to be really good this year, I think, for them to retain him at the $11 million cap hit. It'll be next year, unless, of course, the cap goes up or they want to void it out or something. But the interesting thing I think about Henry, and everyone's talked about it, I can't wait to see it, is read option with Henry as the back instead of Gus. I think will be much more dangerous. Because you can't pick wrong. I feel like with Gus, he was great at short yardage back and everything like that, very efficient. But I think there's just a next level breakaway speed factor and just once he gets going, good luck factor to Henry that will really make defensives nervous, and I'm nervous for him because I think that could be really an incredible tandem, and also just the amount of beef that will be coming your way. Like if they run to the right, let's mention Ben Cleveland there and Falele, and then Ricard. I mean, that's just what is that? Like 1,100 pounds of beef coming at you. It's just absolutely absurd, and I think that might be a lot of fun. So I'm definitely optimistic. I think he also is sneaky good in the pass game, and that's just in general. Like he can throw the ball. We've seen that before, and also as a receiver. And I just think it's really interesting how the running back market swayed after just 1 year. Suddenly, everybody wants a running back, and they're paying them decently. And the thing that's crazier still is you look at a guy, like you brought up Saquon Barkley, he got one of the best contracts. Well, you look at Darnell Mooney, and I'm not trying to hate on Darnell Mooney, but come on. Who would you rather have? They have basically identical contracts. I mean, I'd rather have Saquon Barkley in my offense. I mean, that guy can catch the ball too. He's so much more dynamic. I feel like the replacement level increase is so much higher. It just blows my mind that those two guys cost the same amount in today's NFL.
Yeah, definitely pretty wild. I mean, still not even, there are lots of running backs are still on the market now that really haven't been signed, even some big names. And but yeah, it seemed like tons of contracts being given out, almost like candy. And
the cap went up, man. Everyone was like, "We got some money. We're flush with cash."
Yeah, I guess so. But last thing I wanted to say about Henry before we get to the next guy, though, I think. I don't know how much to believe this right now, but I just kind of had an inkling when he was signed that the Ravens are probably going to double down on having a rush first offense. It doesn't mean that Henry is going to have to be the guy, and the passing offense the last couple of years isn't going to be a forefront. That's not what I'm saying, but I think last year I think one of the challenges with the offense, we were trying to figure out, like, okay, we've got Andrews, we've got Likely. Why don't we see more 2 tight end sets, for example? We're going to lean on these wide receivers. They did do that, and to some success. I think Zay was pretty good. Bateman, Odell, maybe a little disappointing, right? We didn't produce as much as we wanted them to. I think now going into it, kind of seeing what Likely brings to the table, seeing what we still have in Andrews, and now adding Henry to the mix, and wanting to lean more on this sort of like read option. I feel like you're probably going to go to more of an offensive, like you're going to run these 2 tight end sets. Maybe you go to the eye more. I feel like it wouldn't make that much sense to continue running out of 11 with a guy like Henry when you want to have like your 2, tight ends on the field. You want to get Ricard on the field. And, knowing that, all the receivers we had last year, not all of them are coming back. So I'm sure we'll get through more of it as the, off season progresses, but I would, I feel like I would predict that the Ravens are going to run a lot more 2 tight end sets this year.
All right. Well, the next thing that actually was like first in the timeline, but maybe third. I'd say I probably fourth, honestly, in the most interesting scale. But Nelson Aguilar is coming back, which I'm super stoked about. You mentioned, Chris, we do have some attrition in our wide receiver room, but Nelson was exactly what you wanted him to be. I was watching The Dynasty, and he was a big part of the Eagles win in the playoffs.
For those listening, I did an eye roll there.
Yeah,
For those who don't have Apple TV, The Dynasty is essentially, well, let's put it this way. I haven't watched it. So
yeah, I don't know why you're talking. You didn't watch it.
I don't know. Maybe the listeners disagree with me, but I don't really want to subject myself to a 6-episode or whatever it is, Patriots puff piece. That's just
It's not. It's actually like really damning of the Patriots. I can't believe they won so many games. It was so dysfunctional. Like, I don't know. I thought it was actually really interesting, and it reminded me of a lot of things.
Then it's just like oh look, we were so dysfunctional and we still won. Ha, look at us. Whatever. I'll shut up about it, but
I don't know. I enjoyed it, but maybe Peter has too much it's too much hate for TB12 still to possibly subject himself to it. But anyways, Nelson Aguilar I really thought was a true professional, and just thinking about like kind of like how they always try to set themselves up. I think they're trying to set themselves up with the wide receiver room such that like if they didn't draft one, it would be a really sad day, obviously, but this is a workable group regardless. So you don't feel like pressed. Oh my God, first pick, second pick, we have to go wide receiver. I think you could go third round. And obviously you could also pick in the fourth, but then you have to adjust your expectations. But really a good signing. I think a guy that can have a very similar role as last year. And also just like, I think he could take more of those OBJ snaps that Bateman doesn't take. Like if they split it, I'd be comfortable with that in today's like structure of the team.
I'm really glad we got Aguilar back. I hope that there is an additional wide receiver coming into this room, whether it be by, a salary cap casualty that hasn't come yet, veteran guy, or through the draft. I think that Aguilar was great in his role last year. I question if he'll be as effective if he has to step up and do more. Granted, there were a couple times in the season that he did have to, but they were few and far between. It's hard to know if that, was he really able to take on that role, or was it just the defenses weren't ready for it because that wasn't, the plan going in because those situations were due to injury. But everything you said's right. Yeah, he's never. If he had any complaints about his role last year, it never made the media. We've had that problem before in the past with vet guys coming in and they've had to maybe not do as much as they would in other offenses that will pass more. Did he have a couple drops? Sure, but he had a lot of reliable plays, including a touchdown in the postseason. He had a big play against Kansas City in the AFC Championship game. He's a great role player. He was a great role player in this offense, and I could certainly see that continuing. So is it a big signing? Absolutely not, but certainly one that I think is really helpful for this team going forward.
2 tight end sets, man. I'm telling you. That's I mean, it's gonna be the strength of this roster. I mean, right now that's how they're building in free agency. We'll see with the draft. I think there's a possibility of bringing a receiver. I feel like I wouldn't go receiver round 1, round 2. I try to get a late round guy to replace some of the other guys we lost. But yeah, I mean, I feel like your most explosive guys right now are in the tight end room, and you've got Zay. Bateman, we were looking for that step up. Part of the problem was he just didn't have the snaps, didn't have the looks. You don't have some of the other guys there. He goes further up on the progression. You can see what he can do. And Aguilar, you can have come in, take those wide receiver 2 snaps, do a little bit with that, and I think we'll be fine. Like, honestly, I think it's okay. I mean, we put a lot of money and a lot of hype, I think, on the receiving room last year. It did okay. We got to the AFC Championship game, but I think, looking at it too, we went away from the run game. We went away from what we wanted to do. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like at some point, like, we want this offense to evolve, and I think it's going to. I think it still can, but I think by the same token, don't lose who you are. And the Ravens are just not a, spread them out wide and, let's throw it, 30, 40 times a game or something. It's just not really who they are. It's not where their strength is. And I feel like with these signings, it's just reiterating that for me.
Yeah, I think it's something that they just shouldn't do that because it's probably not winning football, right? That's the big thing. There's few games where they should throw 30 plus times that they're comfortably winning the game, I think. Maybe it happens, and that's fine, but I think the running game is so lethal, how they have it set up, and takes away clock, is effective, can still score points. But I think the big thing is you want to have some gotta have it moments in your back pocket where you feel confident in the wide receiver group to step up at those moments. I think Aguilar had a couple of those, like you guys said, and would expect bigger things from Zay and Bateman going forward. And I'll say now, I've been dipping my toe into the draft, and I think the first 3 picks are going to be tackle, corner, wide receiver, and that'd be my guess on the order today. But I'll give you weights later on. Stay tuned. But like that's my guess.
Last thing I want to say on this topic before we move on, I think you guys are hitting on some big things. I go back and forth on whether or not I think that the Ravens should try and become more of a spread offense like the rest of the league is, but I think that the Chiefs really showed you the blueprint last year, and the 49ers as well to an extent, even though they weren't able to pull out the Super Bowl win. Build around what you're successful at. I mean, the Chiefs, look, they basically got to the Super Bowl and won it by playing Ravens football, right? Balanced offensive attack, longer drives, don't turn the ball over, hard-nosed defense that isn't going to give up the big play. I think that they showed that style of football still has a championship ability. So, the Ravens obviously should try and improve the passing attack as much as they can every year. I think they've made some steps to do so. But at the end of the day, don't force what you're not good at, which I think is what you guys were saying. And that's what we're seeing is what they're doing in this offseason. So hopefully it works out for that Super Bowl, but that seems to be the path.
So one of the super interesting developments of this free agency period was the realization on both sides, I guess, for Stanley to rework his contract and just accept the fact that he was going to get cut next year. So it was basically like, when you look at this rework, it says, okay, we were going to cut you next year, and the dead cap hit was going to be, I think, $6 million. We're going to raise it to $8 million to help a little bit with this year's cap concerns. They dramatically reduced his contract. So this is last year of his deal. Dramatically reduced his salary and then massively increased the incentives. So Stanley gets out of this deal the opportunity to make more money than he ever would have this year. And in return, accepting the fact he was never going to get, kept around next year on that contract. I could see the Ravens reworking his contract or extending him come, end of this year if he succeeds. And, he cashes in, he gets all those benefits that they put in the contract. But the Ravens are giving themselves that optionality. And I think that's really great. I'm grateful that Stanley did it. I don't know if Roquan had anything to do with it on their little trip together. But I thought that it was really big of him to do that. He didn't have to. But I think that he also realized, like, if they cut me now, I'm not going to get the money back. Like, it was best for me to stick around, and this was the best, kind of option for my career. And also, frankly, makes it so that this major rework of the offensive line doesn't just become colossal. Replacing 4 positions year over year is a huge risk, because one of the big things about offensive line production is continuity. It's actually a thing that can be tracked. There's a guy that does it every year that points out the continuity maintenance. And then if you look at that to O-line performance, they do track. So the Ravens are making a big bet by doing this big overhaul this year. In a year, I think they're trying to compete, which has honestly led the flock, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, has led the flock to be this is a misguided free agency. You're adding Henry, you're excited about that. It seems like they're trying to do something this year, but at the same time, taking massive risks on the offensive line that could absolutely torpedo the year. I'm not too worried about it. I think that they'll work it out. I think with the draft picks and also the talent in-house, even with the talent in-house, I think the line could be average. And I think with some draft picks and a little bit of player development that isn't too audacious to project, it could be excellent. So I'm here for it. I'm excited for this next chapter, and I'm glad that Stanley is in a way enabling it.
I think they're kind of forced into it. I believe that the moves that they did prior to this, to build the offensive line around a group of veterans in Stanley and Zeitler and Moses, around to young guys in obviously Linderbaum, and why am I blanking on the man who went to Denver? Ben Powers, right?
Yeah, Ben Powers.
Ben Powers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, you've got, we talked about Simpson. He was a good stopgap, but there were certainly too many penalties for him to stick around. And Moses and Zeitler, I mean, Moses, he experienced, his regression year at that age, and Zeitler, while overall he did have a good year, there were certainly signs that he was. His career is unfortunately hitting the back nine. Certainly some pass protections where a couple times where he found himself flat on his back, had some difficulty with more athletic edge rushers, but also had some great games too. But I think that the Ravens are being proactive here, and they're kind of forced into it and looking at okay, yes, you're giving up continuity, but you're also risking, if you keep those guys, an offensive line that's going to have diminishing returns over the years. So it is a gamble. Yeah, I think you're right pointing that out, but it's one that there will probably be some growing pains the first half of the year. But if they can find the right combination of young guys through the draft and through in-house and find some plan to get Stanley back, I still believe in Stanley. I know that not every Ravens fan does, but I saw some glimpses at the end of last year, and I'll continue to say, specifically against that Houston game, where I think Stanley still has that fire. He still has that dog in him if he can get healthy, which is the big if. Look, yeah, it's a gamble, but I think it's one that, given the options that they have, is the best path to go down.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we're probably going to continue talking about this, going into training camp. Or obviously we have to figure out who's going to play left guard. I don't really think we have anybody kind of slotted in for that spot. But it certainly looks like Cleveland, Falele are probably going to be competing for right guard and right tackle respectively. For Moses, I don't mind that too much. I feel like Falele already swapped off a good bit. So, I feel like he's ready. Cleveland, I think you can kind of say the same thing, even though he didn't have as many snaps as Falele did. But, I feel like he's ready as well. But yeah, bottom line though, going back to Stanley though, definitely want to reiterate what you said, Alec. This is huge for him, I think, to be able to do that, to take that, restructured deal. He really didn't have to do that. I think it was, I think it was really good of him to do that. Honestly, I'm not sure how they sold it. I don't know if they said hey, if you do this, you could potentially make more money and we can bring in another guy and, go for a ring this year or something. I don't know how they sold it, but, I hope the Ravens did right by him, and it's definitely appreciated. He did right by the team too. So yeah, I think that tells a lot, I think, for his character. Despite all the injuries and despite all the fans and everyone complaining about his play over the last couple of years and him being injured and everything, like still took one for the team. Like, it's a good guy.
Good guy, Ronnie.
Good guy, Ronnie, no doubt. Well, last bit of free agency news as far as our acquisitions is Josh Johnson is still here. So him and Lee Cunningham will compete for the backup quarterback spot. I find this absolutely fascinating, by the way, because Tyler Huntley was acquired for the vet minimum as well. So it's pretty damning of Huntley, frankly, that they were like, we're moving on at that price. But maybe Huntley wanted to get out. He's like, Lamar's here. That Watson guy's no good. I saw it for myself. Maybe I'll get a chance to start because he hasn't had the best reliability. I don't know. They also have a bazillion quarterbacks over there. So fascinating thing the Browns are doing. But Josh Johnson, welcome to the team. Looking forward to cutting you come roster cutdown day to bring you back. Just like, we know that's going to happen. He's going to get cut.
Yeah, man, I think Huntley was just like, man, I've been on the sideline. Well, and actually going face to face too with Watson in that game in Cleveland in 22. He's like, man, this man ain't it. This man ain't it. This is a much better shot at me getting a starting opportunity than if I stay here. So
yeah.
I mean, not a bad career move for him. I mean, look, Watson has, taking legal things aside, even taking performance aside, first off, the man's had a ton of injuries in the 2 years he's been back. So, it's not a bad roll of the dice at all to go there and see if that's somewhere that can jumpstart your career. And DTR also certainly didn't show any sticking terribly much his rookie year either. So,
yeah, and then they got Jameis there now too, just for fun.
Yeah. That's wild. Alec, it's funny you mentioned cutting Johnson, bringing him back. We missed another name, Brent Urban, as well.
Oh shoot!
So
yeah,
he's
right.
going to be the other guy. Handshake deal.
Yeah, no doubt. Good catch there. Urban's also back, and he will also get cut. But he'll be back. He'll be here all year. He'll be here all year. Oh man, what a guy. Well, I guess with that, we're gonna go to our farewells. Lots of names here. Unbelievable amount of names. I don't know the best way to do this. I might just say them all and where they went, and then we can react to it like that. Sound good?
That sounds like the best path.
All right. And this is, I mean, it was updated as of like 7 o'clock today. All right. We're recording right now. It's 8:12. Okay. So if we missed anything, I'm sorry. Gus Edwards, good luck at the Chargers. Ronald Darby, he went to the Jags. John Simpson and Morgan Moses both went to the Jets. Morgan Moses, it was a trade where we moved up 22 picks in the 4th and gained a 6. Patrick Queen, Steelers. Geno Stone, Bengals. Tyler Huntley, Browns, I could care less. Deshaun Phillips to the Texans. Devin Duvernay to the Jaguars. And the late breaking one is Kevin Zeitler to the Lions.
A lot of names. I think of all those, I'll say this. I don't think any of those losses hurt enough to really impact the win-loss column next year, mainly because you look at the guys that did go. Edwards, we talked about Henry. Queen, you've got an in-house replacement. Is his ceiling as high? I'm not sure, but you have an in-house replacement. You could say the same with Stone and Washington. Obviously, it hurts to see all these guys go. I mean, all these guys performed, adequately to very good during their careers as Ravens, but none of these guys, I think you look at and you're just like, scrambling to replace them because of the plans already laid in place. Now, of course, Zeitler, like we talked about, that is the big gamble, right? Is failing to re-sign Zeitler too much of a gamble with this offensive line? Time will tell with that one, but the rest of them, it's obviously, painful to see these guys go. But I think they're all moves that the Ravens will be able to recover from for this upcoming season.
Yeah. I feel like of these, Moses was a little bit of a surprise, but honestly, once the trade happened, I was like, well, again, Falele's been taking almost half the snaps anyway. So, to be able to get anything from the Jets, I think is a good move anyway. especially in a draft now where, even Eric DaCosta talked about it, and that, it's a retooling year. Like last year we were a little lean on picks. This year we got more. So I think that's helpful. And, Darby, I feel like is the only guy that, he was starting for us this year. Will he start next year if Stevens and Marlowe are healthy? Maybe not, but still, like, he felt like a guy that really contributed and was kind of a surprise signing for us. So would have been nice to keep him. But, I could also see like the Jags were just throwing money to everybody. So, maybe they just wouldn't want to compete with that. I don't know. The Queen signing though, man, that just hurts personally.
I'm ticked off about it too. I mean, the good side is like maybe the rivalry will be a little bit spicier this year. Also, like low-key, they're having a great offseason. I think the Steelers getting Russell Wilson for $0 essentially, and then parlaying Pickett into Fields and 2 7s, like at worst, right? I think is a tremendous move for them. But the problem is they have to figure out who Fields is this year because it's the end of his rookie contract. So I think they need to, I think they need to play him. Like, I think they bamboozled Russ. I know that they already have like leaked out to the press that Russ is still their guy, and like, yeah, let's see what it is. Come week 3.
Sure.
Yeah, come week 3. Let me see.
I mean, it could be, but I mean, yeah, I don't know if the Steelers are like this, bastion of a team that of stability and everything. Like, that's a gamble. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, it could work out. Like, I could see a scenario which it does, but like, you're bringing in 2 new quarterbacks and who weren't that particularly good in the first place, and then you ship off like Deontay Johnson and all that stuff. Like, even adding Queen, right? Like, Queen's a good player. Like, don't get me wrong, but like, those Steelers for a while were trying to find the mic, they couldn't find it. Like, I don't know if is Queen really the guy either. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll find out.
And without Roquan, we'll see. Yeah. And I will say, I mean, the quarterback situation is really interesting. You got yourself a vet in Russ, who's obviously had a lot of success. Didn't do well in Denver, but was that more him? Was that more Denver? Was it a combination of both? I mean, Denver is such a dysfunction. I don't know if, even put Patrick Mahomes there, if he would have been successful. But, I do also still think that Russ was part of the problem, but I also think that was an incredibly, such a dysfunctional situation. And then Fields is interesting too. What's interesting is, obviously electrifying as a runner, one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the league, maybe the second best rushing quarterback in the league outside of Lamar. But still a big question as a passer, like we're saying. I mean, if you actually look back at Mitchell Trubisky's statistics in his first 3 seasons in Chicago, across the board, his passing statistics are better than Fields in every category. But also at the same time, you could argue Mitchell Trubisky had a better supporting cast and a better offensive line than Fields had in Chicago. So, I mean, he hasn't really been in a situation that's prime for him to succeed, right? So you got 2 quarterbacks coming in who arguably have underperformed expectations but have shown promise in the past couple seasons. And now you're putting them in this situation in Pittsburgh where you've got good playmakers. Offensive play calling is a bit of a question mark still. So, yeah, I mean, but it's probably enough to get the Steelers back at the 7th seed, right? Because it's definitely better than what they had, and what they had still almost made the postseason. The Steelers don't need great quarterback play to make the playoffs, So
they made the postseason, man. I mean,
did they make it last year?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Oh, you're right, they did. Well, they were unmemorable in the postseason last year. So
I mean, we were on break. We were on break that week, so yeah.
That's right. Was it Buffalo?
Yeah, Buffalo.
It was Buffalo. Yeah. Oh, that's right. The game that the snow nearly buried. Nearly buried. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, kind of going back though to the free agents, I think you made a good point where none of these losses are, oh my goodness, we got to scramble to fill these holes. And I think that is an intentional pivot. I do think DaCosta might be pivoting to what we talked about a long time ago with Vasily. Like, I really do think they're looking at securing more cornerstone contracts. They're focused on cornerstone contracts because they're going to sign Hamilton, right? They're going to work their butts off to make that happen, and they're going to trust themselves to go in the bargain basement and find the next Ronald Darby, find the next John Simpson, find the next Morgan Moses. I mean, he was a really savvy signing too, and they're just going to work their butts off to find all these guys all these role players, Zeitler, they're gonna focus on that, and that's their bread and butter. And they're gonna have these cornerstone players. They're gonna bet on themselves to be able to do it. Like rather than like raise their baseline, by I don't know, by spending more dollars, they're gonna raise it. They're gonna like bet that they can do it with less dollars, and then keep more cornerstone guys who are the guys I feel like in the playoffs make the plays, right? Like why did Chris Jones get a contract? It's because when he needed to make plays in the playoffs, he did. Why is Hamilton going to get a contract? Because when he needed to make plays in the playoffs, he did, right? Like it's all about these guys who really rise to the occasion and, are big players. I think you might see that from Flowers, frankly, right? Like if he continues to improve, I think he'll learn from what happened in this postseason. He could be an electrifying player. They decide, okay, we're going to extend. But I think that's what they're focusing on. So none of these guys going is too surprising. I will say though, I think no one's talking about it. I am extremely curious what they're going to do at safety. Like Geno Stone played so many snaps and enabled Kyle Hamilton to be in the box. They need to find a safety they're confident in. And I don't know if it's going to happen in the draft. I think they could get a guy that eventually they feel good about, but I don't know if it will be this year. And I'm still thinking there's a lot of safeties still around. That seems like the next, shoe to drop. There's going to be a safety signed somewhere. And then also they'll bring up Worley because of course, and then he'll get cut too. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at.
I mean, it might be our Darius Washington,
Yeah,
but I do understand what you're saying.
It could be. I don't know. He seems a little small.
Well, that's the thing. It's like he could be, but do you feel confident enough going into the season and saying like, oh, it's Washington or bust? And I agree with you completely that no. The answer is no. You want to find something else there someone else to compete there. So yeah, I think that's an excellent point that you bring up there.
Geno, the Bengals, though, I think, talking about that like as well, like, I mean, what a great fit for him. I mean, they had Bates, who was a great player for them for a couple of years, ended up going to the Falcons, and, their safety spot kind of looked a little bit different, but, having him play free and then, have Hill on the other side playing strong, like that's a really good signing for them, I think.
Yeah.
What's crazy to me, and I'm trying to rack my brain, and I really wish I'd had a chance to deep dive this before the pod. I can think of plenty of instances where Cleveland picked up, ex-Ravens, of course, Jamal Lewis, Dave Zastudil, Trent Dilfer, Darnell Dinkins, Paul Kruger, the list goes on, Gary Baxter. But the Bengals and the Steelers, obviously Hayden Hurst a couple of seasons ago, but how many former Ravens have bolted to the Steelers or the Bengals? I can't think of terribly many off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this year, the amount of AFC North poaching was incredible.
Yeah. Harrison's the only one I can think of from the Steelers. Well, I guess we traded Wormley, but
yeah,
doesn't really count.
Yeah, we initiated it.
Yeah. But, particularly the Steelers, man. Like, that's just, man. Queen, can't believe you did that, man.
I mean, I will say though, in Queen's defense, I mean, it's quite clear that from his post, and I think from the way he carried himself, he loved his brothers in Baltimore, his teammates, he loved the fans. But I think when they made the trade for Roquan, I think that sent a message to him, and he just looked at the business side of it and was just like, I think he had a target there, and now he gets a shot at revenge. I completely see that from a human side, being Patrick McQueen's mindset there.
Oh yeah,
for sure. Well, there's a couple guys still lingering in free agency, some of which might come back to the Ravens. J.K. Dobbins is still out there. Arthur Millette, Jadeveon Clowney, Kyle Van Noy, Odell Beckham Jr., and Tyus Bowser. And I think the one that everyone's talking about, and I agree, I think Clowney's the one they want to bring back. If they're going to make cap space and like have cap space around and use it on a guy that's making big plays and this is a disruptor, you go get Clowney. So I think that's going to happen. I think Millette could also happen, but I don't think it'll be a high priority or he'll get like crazy amount of pay. It might be a similar situation to how we got him this year. And yeah, I mean, Odell's definitely gone at this point. He had his goodbye post and also just the way it all is structured. It didn't make sense. And then Tyus, like, I don't even know if he's going to have a career. Like, legitimately. I'm like, is he going to get signed anywhere? So we'll see.
Yeah, man. The Tyus Bowser one is just so strange and so unfortunate at the same time. It's crazy. The guy finally won me over. Finally won me over because I remember we had ended one of our 2020 recap episodes. You guys both lifted Bowser as a guy who, like, had broken out, and I remember saying I needed to see more. And then finally, after 2021, when he had that big year, I was like, okay, Bowser's here. He's for real. Then he tears his Achilles in that final game of the season against Pittsburgh when we were already, well, we weren't eliminated. I guess if we had won that game and multiple things happened, we would have. But still, it turned out to be a meaningless game. And, came back the next season late and made a couple plays, but mostly looked like he was still coming back from an injury. Had this angry knee this year. I mean, just, man, it's such a shame for a guy who, was a second round pick, took a while to come around, and then showed heavy upside. And then now, man, yeah, you're right. I don't know who takes a shot at him. I don't know.
I mean, surely someone would want him at camp. I mean, maybe even we'd want him at camp, right? Like, unless it's like the bridge is completely burned. But like, I don't know. He seems too good to not give a chance at camp. So surely somebody's going to sign him. But no one's trying to wreck any compensatory picks or rush out to go get Tyus Bowser. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Might be the same for J.K. Dobbins, frankly. Which, I mean, I don't know who showed so much promise and also had so much injury, right? Like, I feel like J.K. has to be signed somewhere, but I don't think he's going to come back to the Ravens. Not because of the bad blood that everyone's talking about. Like, I don't know if that's been floated somewhere that there's bad blood. Obviously, the preseason situation happened, but like now that there's Henry, I don't think he'll want to be here because it's like, okay, they're gonna like have Henry and Keaton. Like, when am I gonna see touches? Like, how's that work? I think he'd be a great addition, frankly, because he's a little bit of a tweener in between the two, and injuries happen. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see with JK. I wish him all the best though, because like, yeah, I cut him today in our contract league. Like, didn't love that. Literally signed him an extension and then tears his Achilles 7 days later. Big sad for both fronts.
Yeah. I mean, I really think it wouldn't be a dumb move at all for his career to come back, on a 1 year prove it deal. But I think you bring up a great question. Does he want to? Look, I mean, they're still going to want to have Justice Hill, I think, be the third down back, passing down back under 2 minutes. So he's got his role. Derrick Henry's going to be the starter. The question is, I think, really just how many carries are you getting him per game? What's his snap percentage going to be rather than the starting? And so there's a slot there for Dobbins to have some early season work and show that he's still got it while Keaton rehabs. I'm still of the opinion, without having looked at what his medical, what he's looking at right now, I don't think we're seeing Keaton to start the season. I think he's going to come a little later. Yeah. So there's a shot there, to get some carries, but does he view that as a big enough of an opportunity? And does he want to come here, But if no one else has given him anything, then he might come back after that. But yeah, I would love to have him back. But I don't know if he wants to be back, So he's the guy to do what he views as best for his career, which is unfortunately on the ropes right now, just with all these injuries. So we'll see.
Yeah, certainly. The only thing I wanted to add, just out of these names, just want to reiterate, Clowney for me, I feel like is the guy, the guy to take. Even going into the season right now, I mean, we're looking at, we have Owe and Ojabo and
Robinson.
I guess that's it. Robinson. You probably want to have a vet guy in there. Even now, if Clowney doesn't want to sign until training camp or whatever, that's probably fine. But I feel like he's the guy definitely to target. Kyle Van Noy feels like, I don't know, he feels like a guy where like he could probably be available later. Like, even though he had a good season and everything, like he wasn't signed by anybody before, so I don't know if we're in a rush to get him. But Clowney, I think he's I think there was reports he visited the Panthers as well. So he's a guy that's a proven commodity that people want. So if we can get him signed, I feel like that's one key. And then, we'll see what we supplement with draft picks and everything. But I feel like that group needs a vet.
I think Clowney might sign a little sooner this year, but I don't expect to see him at OTAs. I think he'll have an agreement. I'm going to sign earlier just so I have my business in order and everyone knows where everyone can be happy. But at the same time, I'm not trying to do all that. Van Noy, I think, absolutely does not want to sign right now. I think he might be send a voicemail to all the calls. He's just chilling right now. He's like, I'll come off the couch again. I got this. So, all right. We already kind of talked about the Steelers moves. Anything else we wanted to talk about with them as we go into the AFC North?
I thought that moving on from Deontay Johnson was interesting. Johnson, a guy that I think has a lot of talent, but outside of that 1 year with Ben, has he really lived up to it? Questionable. But still an interesting move for them to give up on him. Arguably they needed an additional cornerback, but that was interesting. I think we saw that it's not done yet, if it'll be done. But I do think that someone posted in one of our chats a rumor that the Steelers are looking into signing Mike Williams, I believe, if I saw that right.
Yeah, he's coming for a visit.
Yeah, so that would be interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I was surprised by that move. I don't know if that one surprised you guys, but I didn't see that one coming.
There was a little bit of smoke that could be the case, that a trade could happen. I was more surprised by the nature of it. Player for player trade is pretty rare these days, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
But it happened. So very interesting. I guess we'll see how that corner shapes out for them. And I kind of with you, Peter. I remember once upon a time, Deontay Johnson was a huge commodity in Dynasty. He was this next guy or whatever. And I just never was completely sold that he was that great. And now he's kind of we'll see. But I think, good on the Panthers to go get a guy for Bryce. I think they're working towards fixing that offense a little bit and giving him a better environment to maybe sucseed. They really screwed him over. And frankly, they really screwed themselves over so much just in general by giving up so much draft capital. It's going to be hard for them to assemble a good team now. So, good luck. I don't know how I would feel to be the quarterback drafted by the team that gives it, all the crown jewels to get me. Because I feel like it's thanks, but no thanks. Be more responsible. Yeah. How are we going to build this anyways? So anyways.
Yeah, well, I guess moving on to the Bengals. We talked about Geno Stone going over there. T. Higgins was tagged, but reportedly he wants out. So no news on that yet. But Tyler Boyd. That's what we hear. The single emoji.
The Bengals are definitely letting that happen.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, but I'm just saying that's what he wants.
Come on, Cincy. Give the man what he wants. We'll give you back Saleh.
Dude, Saleh.
Actually, we need Saleh this year. Never mind.
No, I'll give you Saleh. It's fine. I'll raise you a Tylan Wallace. I think he's a decent player.
Wait, we need him to replace Duvernay. We didn't talk about Duvernay, did we?
It was rattled off, but we didn't really go into it. But yeah, you're right. That's going to be a position that's open, and Tylan Wallace might be the number one there.
Definitely going to draft a guy to compete for that. 100%.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Yeah, imagine so.
But I going back to the Bengals though, I feel like the definitely the interesting move for me was them picking up Zach Moss and deciding, hey, we're done with Mixon, we're going to ship you off to Houston. It's a move, I think. Moss had a good season last year. He certainly played well against us. I feel like between that and Mixon, what you have in Mixon, but I guess they wanted to get younger.
Nah, they want to get Chase Brown, man. That's what I think. This screams to me it's Chase Brown season. Our little darling that could in the draft process is going to get a shot.
He had some flashes late in the season last year.
He's fast. He's a good player.
My dynasty team will be very happy if that happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's the big signal. I was surprised though to get rid of Mixon. There's been some bad blood there for a little bit. There's always been some consternation. I don't think Zach Moss is an upgrade. I think all it is we're moving on. I guess he had some kind of cap hit that would happen. I don't know, but I'm excited to see what they're going to do with Chase, and then they lost Tyler Boyd, who might go to the Steelers because of course every wide receiver might go to the Steelers. It seems.
Just trying to fix that passing game any way they can. Washed up Super Bowl MVP quarterback. All right, bring him in. Washed up rookie draft pick who can run a ton. Bring him in. I'm surprised they didn't get Huntley.
Yeah, right. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Wouldn't have had to give up any draft capital, I guess.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know. I still think Russ could work out for them. One of our chats had said that, like, I feel like Russ is the closest thing to like prime Roethlisberger that the Steelers have had since Ben retired. So I mean, he's got a lot of at least he did have a lot of improvisational skills, at least in Seattle. Didn't really show it in Denver, but there's a world where it could work out. I really hope it doesn't, but I could see it. I see the logic.
The range of outcomes for both of those quarterbacks is incredibly insane, to the point of like both of them could end up working out really well, to both of them could just be completely wash out as well. It's like any path is possible.
Well, I guess they thought that at least they have more outcomes than Pickett.
Yeah. I'm still stunned by that pick. Like, they didn't have to. It was so choreographed. It was about as choreographed as us getting Henry this year, that they were going to pick Pickett at 20. And like, I feel like they were betting against themselves, so to speak, or bidding against themselves in that market. I think next quarterback taken was Malik in the 3rd round. I think they could have got him in the 2nd easy. And then it doesn't hurt as bad. So they really got themselves. Last, the Browns replaced comeback player of the year Joe Flacco with James Winston and Tyler Huntley. And then they traded for Jerry Jeudy, 2nd year in a row that they go grab the guy who had a lot of, pizzazz and maybe even, some production. They did it last year with Elijah Moore, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then they went ahead and got Jeudy, who was one of the guys that, Lamar wanted. Right? It was him or Hollywood. So... And frankly, like, Jeudy looked incredible in college, okay? Like, and he showed glimpses before his injury. He actually looked like he was about to break out in that game where he got injured. And then he got injured, and then it never has quite been the same. So who knows, if that hurt him more than they let on. But, change of scenery for Jeudy. Best of luck to him. Like, frankly, I would love to see him, like, not suck just as a player. Like, I feel like it has to be so hard to have all those expectations of being good. And then, like, things happen. Right, injuries and all that kind of stuff. So, just from a personal level, like, I hope he looks a little bit better. Just don't beat us.
I mean, man, yeah. I want every player to work out, man. I mean, they all come into the league with hype. They're in the league because they did really well in college. With rare exception of maybe someone was just like, oh man, well, their athletics are off the chart. They sucked at college football, but maybe the athletics will all work in the NFL.
Translate.
But yeah, which obviously very rarely has that happened. But yeah, man, I always want all the players to do well, and I just want ours to do even better.
That's right. So let's move out of the circle of AFC North. Let's talk about some other AFC teams. Kansas City, I mentioned at the top that Chris Jones also got the bag, but then I just love the story behind this. I text the boys in our super secret channel. I say, guys, I got a tip that Hollywood Brown is going to the KC. And they're like, where did you hear this? And I was like, well, we bought a mattress and the salesman told us. And then immediately Peter was like, this is bogus. He just wanted to sell a mattress. I was like, no, the deal was done. The deal was done. All right. We were like organizing shipping. Like, it was already like happening. And he was just like, oh, did you hear that Ravens news? Because the day we got Henry. And anyways, lo and behold, 2 days later, he's going to KC. And, he was right. So allegedly, a couple Ravens have gone through that exact same mattress store, and he has befriended them. So he had the deets, man. He had the deets.
He did have them. He did.
It's a good signing for them.
It's a great signing.
God, that's frustrating. Yeah, it seemed like they had to scrape by enough receivers to be able to get a couple catches in the postseason. They still won the Super Bowl, and then they get an upgrade there. Like, my God. Yeah. Man, that's a good one. The Chris Jones contract, though, I definitely think is interesting. It feels like that's a lot of money for him, especially for a guy that I think people were wondering if he was going to retire. I don't want to bet against KC because, man, they've won 2 in a row and like they're going to be the favorites for year 3. But that contract to me like has potential to really blow things up for them. I think probably not the first year, but like year 2, year 3, like depending on how Chris is going to play later in his career, like I think it could be the beginning of the end for them. But I don't want to really bet against them this year.
Yeah, they're really betting on some cap inflation. These are monstrous numbers. I mean, borderline quarterback. I mean, it is the tier of like that middle quarterback contract. That's how much he's getting paid. That's insane to also have with a I think because they're going to have to re-sign. I know he's like has a 10-year deal, but it's never going to stand. Like they're going to have to re-sign Mahomes too. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, but this is the team that finally figured out how to bring Taylor Swift and the NFL together. So like
that's why they're
banking. They
know
the
team.
That's how the cap's going
up.
Taylor Swift bump. That's why the caps are going to go up.
I was gonna say the team hasn't done anything. The team. The only thing the team's done now is piss off the fan base and say that they're going to move the other side of Kansas City.
That's right.
Owner.
Yeah,
that's what the owner's done. Taylor Swift had nothing to do with the team.
You sure no one in the front office, picked out earmarked a couple of the single guys and were just like, look, if you can bring Taylor Swift in, you know what this is going to do to your future contract possibilities.
Yeah. Well, Joe Flacco went to Indianapolis, backing up Anthony Richardson, which is, of course, exactly the, scheme fit guy. I guess they were also like, well, we had Gardner Minshew, Flacco's kind of close, that works. So, all right, there you go. And then the most interesting, I think there's 2 really interesting things, but the Chargers, man, are literally just a little Ravens, okay? They go ahead and get Jim Harbaugh. They go ahead and hire Ortiz. And what does Ortiz do? He brings in all the old Ravens, all right? He get the band back together. Gus Bus goes over there. Hayden Hurst goes over there. Bozeman signed today, all right? And he's getting rid of players that he doesn't want. He didn't re-sign Eckler. He went to the Commanders, and then he cut Williams and traded Keenan Allen for a 4th-round pick. All right, so he's cleaning the books, these big contracts. I mean, it is a total revamp over there, man. And I tell you, man, the amount of like Harbaugh guys, right, that are going over and just Ravens guys with Ortiz, I tell you, it's wild. Like they're clearly, I think, going to be a problem for the Ravens, frankly, going forward. I think they're going to like a lot of the same players in the draft. Right, like Ortiz is a huge part of the culture here as far as like how picks were made and who they evaluated highly. So just another team to keep an eye out for. Them and the Jets are the 2 teams where I'm like, they might get our guys.
Ravens West and Ravens North.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they already made the trade, obviously, with Moses and signed Simpson. So, and they do have like this pipeline of like reject offensive linemen that just go to the Jets. Like it's incredible. So, anyways, yeah, I think, and maybe even OBJ goes to the Jets, right? Like because that was always rumored. So there you go, another guy moving over there.
Yeah, Chargers, man. We're gonna see. I mean, I guess now, I knew when Jim was signed, like Greg Roman had to have been the guy, even though like it's a terrible fit with that roster. But now knowing that Keenan and Williams are gone, and Eckler are all gone, so like okay, well now your offense is literally just the quarterback now. So I guess it's not so bad. If you got Gus over there, probably running back 1, running back 2, they'll probably draft a tight end or there. Gosh, it's going to be like 2018 Ravens on that offense, like all over again. Their defense is probably going to be good, though. I mean, I think I want to say out of all the guys that they could have cut for cap saving, I think they kept them all, right?
Yeah.
Mac, I know, was the one guy that particularly that they were talking about, but they're probably going to keep them all. Like, depending, I don't remember who they brought on for like defensive coordinator, but like it had to have been better than the head coach from last year. It's a good roster. If they got the right coach, like that's good defense, and they had a run game that, like they'll be a good team.
Yeah, certainly interesting. We'll see if it works for them. It seems odd to do a rush first offense around Justin Herbert. But I mean, at the same time, airing it out as much as they have with the defense that they wasn't really working out with them for, even getting to the playoffs. So maybe that is what the Chargers need. We'll see. Jim obviously had a good bit of success with San Francisco before things went south there, and had success with Michigan, and now he's got another crack at the NFL. So we'll see.
Minter's the guy. Jesse Minter. He was the guy
that's right.
that after McDonald left, everyone was like, "Oh yeah, he's gonna come back to the Ravens." No, Jim sniped him. Yeah. So
yeah,
they're gonna have a good defense.
The other thing I'll say too with is Giro did take a year off. Okay, he said he was going to look at the NFL and try to learn about the past concepts. And he's probably a pretty smart football mind. He might have learned something, right? Like, it's so hard to sit down and actually do what he was able to do in a year off, like a true year off, and like actually have time to try to like learn new things and learn new concepts. I think he could not suck, and also like, I thought it was definitely overdue to change, things up for him. But like I said, like, he did some good things, and, there's a possibility of some growth there. You could teach an old dog new tricks sometimes, and we'll see. But Houston was already a good team, and they are committed to being a contender. And in fact, the mattress guy has them making the Super Bowl. So fun fact. He had them and the Lions, which I think would be a fun Super Bowl, even though it's not with the Ravens. But if I had to pick like an alternative Super Bowl, I'd be very down for that. Two franchises that could absolutely use a Super Bowl victory. But anyways, Houston goes ahead and signs Danielle Hunter. They also went and picked from divisional rival Tennessee, Danico Autry and Aziz Al-Shayer. And then also got Tommy Townsend from Kansas City. Traded for Mixon, as we mentioned earlier. Delshawn Phillips in there to compete for linebacker as well. And kept the other players as well. So I think a team on the ascendancy, even if their threads are taking a step back.
Oh yeah, those those uniform leaks, man. I mean, the uniforms themselves looked fine, but that number font.
Oh man. God, it's god awful. Yeah, I hope it's wrong.
Gosh, man. I mean, and Nico Collins and Tank Dell are so nice, man. And they got to wear those uniforms with those numberings. Oh, man. Travesty to the game of football. But, yeah, I mean, Houston, look, I stand by what I said when we played them. Like, I didn't think they were ready this year. I think they certainly overperformed. I mean, gosh, making the playoffs with D'Amico Ryans, rookie head coach, and CJ Stroud, rookie quarterback. But, yeah, D'Amico Ryans, he's got a plan there. That man has made the Texans scary, and they're a legitimate contender for the Super Bowl this year. I see no reason why. So their offseason is setting them up great.
So, we didn't have the people that left Houston, but I was just looking it up. I know Singletary left for the Giants. He was pretty good for them, and they actually lost a couple of different people. So Greenard, who was one of their defensive linemen, he left for the Vikings. So it's actually kind of like trading Hunter for him. And Blake Cashman, if you guys recall, as linebacker, also ended up going to the Vikings as well. So and apparently their punter also went to the Steelers, which is why they picked up Townsend.
Oh, there it is.
But yeah, anyway, I mean, I think there's some good moves, but they did have to, replace some of those holes for players that left for other places. So, we'll see what happens. They draft well again. Like, I think it could still be a good team.
Tell you, man, these teams that come on the other side of the deals where they get a bunch of picks, the Lions, Houston, we're talking about them as good teams now. What a shock. Maybe when teams come with the bag of picks, like if you're even a semi-competent front office, you should take it and run, because it's a good way to build a football team. Anything else, guys?
I think that's it. I mean, man, it's been a crazy free agency period. Quite a bit has happened, particularly in the AFC North. But it's definitely was an exciting week, and we'll see what other moves the Ravens make to round out this roster.
For For sure. Well, we'll be back to talk about the draft, and maybe if anything else happens major for the Ravens. And you can find us on Twitter at OneWinningPod, emails onewinningpod@gmail.com. Like I said, it's draft season, so we'll start looking at some prospects and figuring out who we want to target and when. Go Ravens.